Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be, and at whatever time you're tuning in to this episode. My name is Lisa Thomas, and this is episode 11 of Lawyers with Stories. This podcast is mainly a resource for aspiring lawyers, law graduates, even those that have maybe wanting to pursue a career in law after another career. And we just aim to showcase real people and their backgrounds and just debunk a lot of the myths and assumptions that often tend to come up with lawyers, especially lawyers that have become successful. We tend to create our own narrative in our heads. And of course, we know that uh, no one's journey is a straight line, as much as university gives you that impression. So we want to hear about all the nuances and the failures and the mistakes, and hopefully it will inspire you. If your journey isn't straightforward, that you're not abnormal, right? And we're not just showcasing successful people. Sometimes we showcase people that have even left the career and might be doing something else. And so that might be an inspiration for you if you are thinking of that. And also those that might have given up their career because of, for example, mental health reasons, which is totally legit, and no one should sacrifice their mental health, physical health, for any career, let alone a legal career. So today, I'm very pleased to have Khairiyah Safeda from South Africa, Cape Town, one of my favorite cities to live in outside of Durban. Um, and she owns a law firm, and she specializes in conveyancing and anti-nuptial contracts and all of those things that I am not very au fait with, and which I've been learning from her. And we're going to be learning together as we create content together in the future, which I'm excited about. And yeah, so she's going to share her story with you, and hopefully you can take away some nuggets, and ideally you'll come back to the episode and listen to it over and over again, and you may pull out some new stuff. So I'm going to allow Khairiyah to introduce herself, lest I leave anything out of her CV. And of course, get you to hear more from our guest than from me. So Khairiyah, take it away.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast and giving me this opportunity to share my journey. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and how I got into law. And hopefully, I will remember everything that has happened to me in my whole entire life. um, so, I'm from Cape Town. I was born in Cape Town. I lived in Cape Town for a very long time. Um, and I come from a family of five. It's my mom, my dad, and my two younger brothers. So I am the eldest daughter. I always succeeded academically. I was the first in my grade in high school, I think grade 10, 11, 12. And I passed matric with a distinction. And then I studied at the University of Cape Town. And believe it or not, I did not study law first. I actually did a Bachelor of Science in microbiology and biotechnology. And my dream was to become a virologist and do research on viruses and hopefully cure viruses. And I actually struggled the first year because I failed physics. And there's a huge jump between high school and university. Um, and so, even though I failed physics, I made it up by doing microeconomics and macroeconomics. and I got credits for that. And I continued with my science degree, and it didn't set me back at all, which was the best part about it. And I realized in my final year of my degree that this was not for me. I disliked working in a lab as much as I enjoyed all the theory and reading up about science and everything that they have discovered, and how it was helping us right now. I did not enjoy the practical side of things. I did not enjoy lab work. I was actually terrified of needles and blood in hospitals. And I completed the science degree and I graduated. A lot of the jobs out there were jobs where I would have to work in a lab and test people's blood and their urine and their stool. And I said, oh, I can't do this. Absolutely can't do this. And I can't see myself doing this. And so I decided to study law. And I did a postgraduate law degree, which means I did it in 3 years instead of 4 years, and they simply condensed it into 3 years. And I failed DLET, and luckily I just got to add it on into my final year, and it didn't set me back by a year. And at this stage, I was tired of studying, and I started to feel like I wanted to work. And I told myself I'm going to continue with this law degree and finish it, and then I am going to do my articles. And during these 3 years that I did my LLB at UCT, I was lucky enough to do vacation programs. I ended up doing a vacation program at Clifton Hofmeyr. And unfortunately, they did not offer me articles. I did a vacation program with Webber Wentzel in Cape Town. And they were impressed with me, but unfortunately, they had already chosen all their candidate attorneys for the following year. And so there was no opening for me. But they were kind enough to give me an opportunity to do the vacation program in Johannesburg. So they were kind enough to fly me to Joburg, and they paid for my flights and my accommodation, and I did their 2-week vacation program in Joburg. And they offered me articles, but it would require me to relocate. And at that stage in my life, I declined. I thought, I'm not going to relocate to another city. I'm very happy in Cape Town. I didn't want to leave my family behind. So I actually decided to decline that offer. I passed my LLB degree and I graduated, and then I had no articles. And then I took this shotgun approach and I started to apply everywhere and do interviews everywhere. And I was fortunate enough, ENS contacted me, and they said that they had an opening. And I went for an interview and I got the job. So after I graduated, I think I was without articles for maybe 3 or 4 months. And then I got my articles. On my first day at ENS, something very crazy happened. So I was walking in, I went to the reception area and I sat down and waited for HR to come and get me. They were going to introduce me to my principal and take me on a tour and show me around. But as I'm sitting at reception, there was another candidate attorney, and it turns out that this candidate attorney was leaving. And he sat there complaining about how unhappy he was, how poorly they treated him, how they made him work long hours, and that it was a terrible work environment, and that he's leaving. He's leaving, um, and HR was coming to escort him out. And my brain just totally spiraled in that moment. And I thought to myself, oh gosh, what kind of work environment is this? Am I replacing this candidate attorney that was leaving? Is my boss going to be horrible? And I was so excited because it was my first day with my first job. And to be told that right at the beginning before I start, it put a damper on things. But I told myself, okay, this was this person's experience. My experience might not be the same. I cannot confirm or deny all those things he said. I can't speak for him and his experience, and I have no idea what happened to this person. But I actually had a really good first day. I was taken on a tour everywhere. I was introduced to everyone, and I was put in the corporate commercial law department, and I was very happy there. Um, I was grateful for the experience, and what it taught me. And I worked a lot with high level clients like Growth Point and Roll Property Group, many import and export companies, Transnet. And I got exposed to a lot. And we also worked quite closely with the conveyancing and the wills department and the tax department. Um, and this was also where I got exposed to a lot of property related transactions because our clients were very property focused. My articles was very tough because we worked long hours. I mean, I worked 12-hour days, and then I had my PLT lectures in the evenings from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. And as my articles progressed, my health started to take a knock. I was struggling to breathe. I was wheezing all the time. I was out of breath. I had these coughing fits. And then halfway through my articles, I needed sinus surgery. And I had to take off 2 weeks. I had also gotten engaged during my articles and was planning a wedding during my articles. And when I came back from my surgery, I rotated to the litigation and environmental law department. And I got exposed to litigation, and my senior associate that I worked under she would go overseas to study aviation law because she wanted to add that to her skills and her practice. And I would have to run her litigation practice for her. I also wrote my board exams, and I took off 2 weeks, and I wrote all four in one go, and I passed all four. And I think during that second year of articles, as my health deteriorated, I also ended up having an asthma attack. And I didn't even know that I had asthma at the time. And I ended up in hospital for a few days and then went back to work. And I had my wedding during my articles. And because I had taken off so many sick days, and I took 2 weeks off for my surgery, 2 weeks off to study. I was in hospital a few days. There were a lot of days that I took off. It was very difficult for me to take off for my wedding as well. I only took off a few days for my wedding. But it was obviously still a great wedding, and everything still went very smoothly. And I was continuing with my articles, and 2 months after I got married, during my articles, I fell pregnant. And it wasn't planned at all. I always thought I was going to continue working for ENS and go up the corporate ladder and become an associate and a director. And life happens. So the first trimester of my pregnancy, I worked for ENS and I completed my articles. At the end of my articles, they offered me a position in the litigation department, and I declined. I sat there, and although I was very grateful for the experience and the exposure, I realized that I needed to have more of a work-life balance, and I wanted to be a present spouse and a present mom. And I thought to myself, there's absolutely no way that I could continue working 12-hour days and sometimes even in the weekends. So I decided that I'm going to take a career break. Excuse me. And I am going to take some time off to recover. Excuse me. To recover and focus on my health and focus on my pregnancy. And in that stage, my husband had taken a new job as well. And he was traveling every alternate week. And I thought to myself, what am I going to do? I wanted to be a present mom. I wanted to be a present spouse, but I also wanted to work. And I thought to myself, why don't I study something that is going to give me a lifelong skill and give me a little bit more freedom, but also allow me to work and earn some money. And I decided that I was going to study conveyancing and a notary. I remember that the conveyancing department didn't always work as late as we did. And I had a neighbor who was a conveyancer, and she worked from home. She did everything on a laptop, and only when she needed to go to the deeds office did she leave her home. And so she was able to actually look after her kids and run her own business. And what is also great about conveyancing is that conveyancers charge a flat fee. They don't work on the billable hour structure. So there's no issue with having to work more or longer hours in order to make more. It's not dependent on the number of hours that you work at all. So when my son was 6 months old, I started studying again, and I did the conveyancing and notary course, and I wrote the exams. I passed notary first time. With the conveyancing exam, I passed the practical exam, and I failed the theory exam by 1%. And I had an oral exam, and I passed the oral. And then I got admitted as a conveyancer and a notary. And then, of course, life happens again, and I have another life twist. And my husband gets this job in Joburg. And instead of now taking the time to set up my conveyancing business, I ended up packing all our bags, and we had to move to Joburg within 30 days. And it was so funny because I had been offered articles in Joburg, and even while I had taken my career break, I had been offered legal advisor positions in Joburg. So I packed our bags and off we went, and we relocated to Johannesburg. And at this point, I was quite concerned. I thought to myself, gosh, what am I going to do now? I had no support in Johannesburg. Both our families were in Cape Town. My whole network came from Cape Town. And decided, okay, let us first settle in Johannesburg. Let's unpack everything. Let me find my feet. And we were renting a place and decided that we didn't like where we were living. We were going to live somewhere else. And we bought another place and we moved there. And I had to figure out schools for my son, and I did that. Um, and then I started to look for other jobs because I thought, okay, now I can go back to legal practice. I've had my break. We've moved. I did everything that I needed to do. Um, and I started looking for jobs. Um, but everywhere I went, it was long work hours, and I'd have to come into office every day. And I wanted something with flexible hours or something more remote. And this was before COVID. So, I mean, no one really offered, especially in the legal industry, something like that. Um, I did get offered this job by a law firm in Sandton. That was going to make me head of the conveyancing department, and I would need to start the conveyancing department from scratch. And just as I was about to take it, another life twist happens and COVID hits. So no property transfers were happening and the deeds office was closed. And so I didn't end up taking this job at all. And I said, you know what, let me go back to my original plan, which was to start my own conveyancing business and open up my own law firm. And I contacted the Gauteng LPC, and I asked them, how do I go about opening up my own law firm? What are the requirements? And they sent me these forms. And I opened up a trust account and I registered a company. And then I also needed to complete the practice management course. And I told myself, okay, this is the perfect opportunity. We're all at home. And the course was now online. So let me do it online while we're all at home and waiting for everything to open up again. Of course, I had no idea it was going to take this long for COVID to disappear and for everything to open up again and go back to normal. Um, but when everything did open up and go back to normal, I had completed the practice management course. I had done my logos. I had set up a website, my trust account. I opened up and then I launched the business. And I launched last year. And the rest is history, as they would say.
Wow. Okay. Let's start.
I do love talking.
I'm guessing that's the abridged version, right? Gosh, there's so much. There's a lot to unpack. Firstly, I mean,
Yeah,
I just when I saw your questionnaire that I gave, and I saw you studied science, I was like, hmm. Like most of like law degrees doesn't usually come. A head for law doesn't tend to combine with the head for science. And
yeah,
I mean, so that,
yeah,
that I mean that's pretty unusual. And especially to pivot from science to law. You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
but I think I would, from what you said, it was a somewhat informed decision to do that. Um, and I think that also maybe speaks to people that now you have the BA, LLB, and these combination degrees. So even people do a BA and then they do an LLB. Um, So that was really, I thought that was really interesting, to go from wanting to be a virologist to a lawyer. I mean, you got helped us during COVID. I mean, you left it behind. You could have helped us during COVID.
Yeah, I would have been very
If
busy testing everyone during COVID and running all those COVID tests.
I thought that I'd make a point of mentioning that, because I think even when we choose law upfront, and maybe you can speak more to, um, maybe what made you decide to study the science degree, and of course why did law not factor into, um, your options? Because I know when I chose it, it was because it was expected of me. So like, maybe did you have like a science background in your family, or
So no, no one in my family has a science background. Like my
uh-huh.
parents don't have a science background. My father's an architect, and so
Uh-huh.
I've always loved property. I mean, I grew up on the building sites and stuff.
Okay.
So there's always been an interest in property. Um, Before I went into science, I was actually considering accounting. And when I was in high school, I actually did a vacation program with Deloitte. Um, and I thought I was going to do that, but I also thought, oh, I'm going to work with numbers my whole life and look at a screen of numbers. I don't know. I think I think like a lot of young students, when you're in high school, you don't really know what you want to do. Um,
Yeah.
you don't really know which direction you want to go into. And I thought, okay, I did really well in science. I really loved it. Our school had a microscope. I really loved working with that. Let me just follow what I like. And I was lucky enough to get a bursary with the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, and they paid for my studies. And they were looking for graduates, or sorry, they were looking for students to go into the science field. There was a huge lack of students in the science field at that stage. Um, but the jobs were also far and few between, and it was very limiting in that often it was generally lab work. And I discovered in my final year, we did a lot of practicals, a lot of lab work, that I don't actually enjoy that. Um, and I think even when I talk about myself and my whole journey, I'm constantly pivoting and changing what I think I should be doing. Because as a person, I'm changing. What I used to like, I might not like 10 years later. Um, and as people, we're constantly evolving and we're learning and we're being exposed to things. Um, I actually thought, okay, I would go into intellectual property, because I have the science degree. Um, and when I was applying for articles, they said, no, yes, you've got a science degree, but you would need to have a master's or a PhD in science. And I thought, I'm not going to go back to do that. I know people who studied science with me and they did their law degree with me, and then they went back and did their master's and their PhD, and only then
Yeah.
went and worked in a law firm. And I just thought, no, I'm not going to do that to myself. I was
Yeah.
tired of studying. Yeah, and I had enough. I wanted to enter the working world. Um, yeah, and sometimes during your life, you just get tired of things. Like some people
Yeah.
get tired of school, or they get tired of the favorite sport they were playing. You get tired of studying. For me, it was 6 years of studying. It was a long time. And then when you're doing your articles, you're also studying. You're studying
Yeah.
for your board exam. And then I
Yeah.
had to study conveyancing and notary. even though I was exposed to it at ENS, I didn't have an opportunity to write my exams while I was at ENS. I had to do my board exams first. Um, so, yeah, my journey has not been a linear journey. It hasn't been a straight line. And I was constantly trying to figure it out. And I think there's a huge lack of exposure to life and to careers when you're in high school. And even when I'm in university, there was a huge lack of exposure and a huge lack of information. I mean, I didn't know that I had to apply for articles 2 years in advance. So the law firms were taking in candidate attorneys 2 years in advance.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it was very crazy. I had to learn quite a bit about the real world and how things really happen. And, I thought I would be studying science and sitting in a lab all day, and now I'm not.
Uh, I think that echoes a lot of our journeys, and that we, the whole studying, especially the whole studying side of things. Myself came to a point where I was also tired of it because I took 5 years to do my law degree instead of four. And I did pupillage, which was another year, which was six. So I was exhausted beyond exhaustion by the time I hit the ground running to start my practice. So yeah, you do get tired of oh, you got to do this and you got to do that, and I think maybe sometimes we just pivot or we just say, I do see myself in the legal field at some point in your case. You know, going into intellectual property using my science degree is not going to work. So, the next viable option would be to study law. And again, that whole thing about having no exposure. I mean, even when we were told we had to apply for articles, for our international listeners, that's what you call a training contract or an internship. We were told to do it in advance, and I mean, those of us that we did do it in advance, and most of us still didn't get it. So
Yeah, yeah,
we were sitting at after graduation, and I think I applied to the bar to do pupillage out of not having any other options, and of course not wanting and not having the money to study further, even if I wanted to. So it was just like a last resort, and they even initially rejected me, which because I didn't. I mean, I'm coming straight from university. They're like, please get experience and come back. And of course,
yeah.
I managed to get in because somebody had topped off the class for that year. But yeah, we just sort of we have to like, just feel it out, and there's no
Yeah.
exposure, there's no real life exposure, there's no career advice. So I think that's a nice thing about hosting people on this podcast is that we get to find out, like, you also struggled, you also didn't know what to do, and
Yes.
you had to employ some kind of thought process, maybe ask some lecturers if they were interested in you, or go to the counseling services and ask them. But somehow you had to make a decision because you're like, the science thing, I don't like it, and I've got to have a career, and I can have a career with a degree, and okay, I'm going to study law. Whatever thought process you went on, you had to employ it, which I think is what a lot of people struggle to do. But of course, in your case, it worked out. And just that part where you
Yeah.
initially, you said you declined articles because of the relocation aspect,
Yes.
and you wanted to be close to family. I tend to see a lot of those posts on LinkedIn where,
Yes.
and I wisely refrain from commenting, where the desperation to get articles is real, right? The desperation
Yes.
to progress your career after you graduate, and of course, there's a whole lot of unspoken, unarticulated pressure that you feel that, my peers are progressing, so I have to also appear to be progressing. And so I often see those posts that people will say they're willing to relocate anywhere,
Yes,
and I'm
yes.
like,
Out of desperation.
out of desperation. And of course, if you really think about relocation, there's a lot that goes into it. I mean, of course, there's money, there's finding a place to stay, there's leaving your family, your support structure behind. So maybe you can just give some wisdom there. So how you, I mean, you initially said you didn't want to leave your family behind, but I mean, to risk not getting articles again, like how did you make that? Was it an easy decision to choose a family over
I
career at
think it
that
was.
stage?
I think it was very, very difficult.
Mm,
It was very difficult. I knew that I might not get articles after that because the offer was so close to the end of my degree.
mm-hmm,
And everybody was scrambling to get articles.
mm,
And everybody was telling me to actually take it. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity. So many of us are looking for articles. You're so lucky.
yeah.
Please take it. And I just didn't feel comfortable. And I think looking back, I ended up in Joburg anyway. I
Yeah, we'll come
always
to
feel
that.
like,
I want to talk
yeah,
about that. We'll come to that.
yeah. I always feel like looking back, maybe I should have taken it. I ended up in Joburg anyway.
Yeah, but
Um, and,
but
and
that pressure, like I said, everyone's telling you to take it, you know.
yeah, yeah.
But take it, as I always
It
point
comes
out to
with
my students,
sacrifices.
at what cost? Yeah. So it's like, oh, take it, you might never get it again. And of course, you didn't
Yeah,
get articles immediately after graduation, which you
no,
could have gone back and gaslit yourself and said, oh, you know,
yeah.
maybe I,
I was,
maybe I, maybe I should have, or maybe should have, would have, could have. Look at me now.
yeah,
Like my peers have got articles, and I
yes.
chose. So it seems like it's an easy decision to make because you're like, I need my family, I need my support structure, I need my network, whatever, however big or small it is at that stage. But then you're weighing that against, I'm risking not progressing in my career according to a certain timeline. Um,
Yes,
and I'm
yes.
gonna feel, and I think that's where some of the pressure comes in because you kind of feel, and I get this kind of vibe and sentiment often, where you feel like, oh, if it's not progressing at the same pace as your peers, if something is wrong with you, or
Yes.
if you choose that, or if you choose other things over that, like a child or family or a spouse or maybe a sick parent over progressing your career, that something is wrong with you. And then you kind of, again, you tend to gaslight yourself about, if I didn't do, if I just went with that suggestion, then I wouldn't be lagging behind. And so let's acknowledge that
I
it is difficult. It looks easy in that family should be like your first choice, but it's not. It's actually not easy in terms of all the sacrifices you put into studying to get to where you are.
no, and I sat thinking about it for a very long time,
Mm,
and I knew that there's a possibility that I might not get articles. But in the moment, something was telling me, I don't feel comfortable with moving right now. I don't feel comfortable going to a city, trying to figure things out on my own. I don't know anybody there. Trying to find a place. I need to get a car. At that stage, you still needed to have a vehicle if you were a candidate attorney. I don't know my way around Joburg. I was actually terrified. I was terrified to step out of my comfort zone. Um, that was something that for me was very much being a homegirl. That was very difficult for me to step out of my comfort zone and say, okay, I'm leaving everything behind here my whole life. and let me try and start again in a different city. I felt very uncomfortable doing that. And I was hoping that I would get articles somewhere else. I was trying to be very optimistic. Of course, in that moment, I rejected it, and then I didn't get articles anywhere else. And I sat at home for a few months while everybody else was doing their articles.
Yeah.
And it was very depressing. It was very sad. And then your mind plays tricks on you, right? Your mind goes, oh, you should have done it. You should have taken it. You should have gone. You should have relocated. Oh, maybe you could have found a way. Um, and then ENS came along and gave me an offer. And looking back, I don't regret my decision at all. It's like it actually worked out.
Mm.
Yeah, you just
Yeah. I
sometimes
think,
need to have faith.
yeah, I think, just I often tell, or I have this view that no one can make a decision for you, because down the line you don't want to have any bitterness or resentment and say you decided for me or I did this for you and it didn't work out, so now it's all on you. Like, you make the decision in the best way you know how, so that down the line you don't have, you can sort of have faith in your ability to make a good decision, so that when it does eventually work out, you can say, you know, it's like, I believed in my ability, or I did the best, I decided the best I could with what I had at that point. And I mean, it worked out. Even if it doesn't work out, like, you have to make the
Yes,
best decision with the information you have at that moment. You can never ever go back into the future and say, I could have made a better, of course you could have made a better decision, but you wouldn't have been able to see into the future. We're not psychic. So um yeah, so I mean, you eventually got articles, and you're fairly lucky compared to most people, because we have people sitting at home, like I mentioned before we hit record, 2 years, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
you have, I mean, existential crises going on. And
yes.
was it worth it? Or, did I study law? Did I make a mistake? Was the sacrifice worth it? Is there something wrong with me? I get all these questions, like, and I realize, like, that waiting period. I mean, even 2 months. After 2 months, you kind of start to panic. But any kind of waiting period is never uncomfortable. And so I feel like you're one of those, I won't say privileged, but you're one of the lucky ones to have gotten articles 2 months after graduation, which is like, it's almost instantaneous compared to the amount of time people wait these days. And of course, lots of things happen in your articles, right? So you've got a lot, you've got a lot to unpack there.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I personally admire people that have this capacity to juggle so many things. I mean, when I was at university, it was just studying. I was like tunnel vision, and I was doing pupillage, it was just pupillage. I didn't have anything else going on. So you had obviously health challenges, which we're going to talk about. Life changes, two major life changes. And I mean, I'm actually surprised that all of this was crammed into your your articles. It's like, it was one thing
Um,
if it's like spread out, but it's like, so I mean, just let's talk about the health stuff,
yeah,
because obviously it's carryover from studying and fatigue and not stopping. And so maybe just
yes.
talk on, because obviously there would have been some mental health issues as well. Not saying you, not saying you're a mental person, but you there would have been various, like, warning signs from your body. And so just
Yeah,
talk
yeah.
through, how you were able to, for example, not just push through, which a lot of people tend to do. And I warn so loudly against, like,
I
so
think
you
I
obviously
think
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's, you studying in high school. I mean, you have matric, then you study 6 years at university with no breaks, and then you go straight into work with no breaks,
Yeah,
and you're working 12-hour days. You're also studying and working because of the PLT lectures in the
yeah,
evenings. Sometimes I would have to work weekends as well. There was very little time for breaks, and there was very little time to have a work life balance. I think during my articles, I probably had the worst work life balance. My work
mhm,
consumed me. My articles, and then studying for the board exams and doing those lectures, it totally consumed me more than studying law and more than studying science.
mhm,
I still had a bit of a break, in the evenings with science, and with when I was studying the LLB. I mean, you have your lectures in the morning, and then afternoons you have your tutorial sessions, and then you just go home and you relax or you do homework or assignments. But when you're doing articles, it's it's even more hours. It takes even more out of you, and of course, there's a lot of stress. Um, it's a high pressure work environment. Everything had to be perfect. There was a particular standard all the work had to be at. We were constantly learning new things as well. Um, as candidate attorneys, we also had to do presentations in front of the whole department, especially on the latest legal developments. There was a lot going on. Plus, I got engaged and I had to plan a wedding. There was so much going on. And I think over the years, it's probably been a buildup. And it's probably because during those 2 years of articles, I had so much on my plate that I wasn't taking good care of myself. I wasn't taking the breaks that I needed. I wasn't getting enough sleep. I wasn't getting enough exercise. Um, Eating wise, you could eat when you had a break. Sometimes you'd go the whole day without eating, especially if you're in court and you're there all day. I mean, it's tough. And I think my health just, it was telling me, your body's had enough now. Your body needs a break. It completely has had enough. And then it starts presenting symptoms, right?
yeah,
I know some people have panic attacks, some people throw up, some people get diarrhea. For me, it was like my nose and my lungs. I started having sinus issues. My allergies started to worsen. I started to wheeze all the time. I was coughing all the time. I was out of breath all the time. And it was very, I mean, there's nothing worse than someone coughing all the time in the office. I can tell you that much. No one likes that person that continuously coughs. It's very irritating. And I had gone to see a few doctors, and I'm anti-surgery. I don't like hospitals. I don't like needles. I don't like blood. And I have to go and do the sinus surgery. I even go and get a second opinion from another doctor. And my nasal passages were blocked. Um, and I had polyps, and I needed to have them surgically removed and open up everything, so that I could breathe again. And I had to take 2 weeks off my articles, 2 weeks, um, which is a lot of time. And obviously, I suppose an inconvenience to everyone as well. And you worry about all your work and your articles, and you're at that stage in your career where you want to impress.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and you want to do well. And yeah, I am. Well, oops, I need to take surgery for and be off for 2 weeks. Um, it doesn't look good, and and inside I almost felt like, gosh, my body is just not keeping up with me mentally, you know. I need to do all these things, but my body is telling me you need to rest. You need to take it easy. And things were starting to take its toll on me. I think all those years of studying and putting myself under pressure and the stress and always performing well, um, eventually it catches up to you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
and I think that's what happened.
yeah, and it's often we learn when it happens. So that's one of the millions of things that I try to teach is to preempt it, or to learn to listen to your body, right? And I often tell people that you're going to work a lot, 'cause a lot of us, university tends to put forward a lot of these big firms as though that's the representation of the entire profession, and we know now that it's not. And I tell them, look, you want to work in these big firms, and ENS is huge, as an example. Um, you're gonna have to be prepared for the mental onslaught, or as I say, put it crudely, bigger firm, bigger headache, right? Um, and so, if you want to be there, you have to understand that whatever your colleagues or peers might be experiencing on a micro level, because of the size of the firm, it's inevitable that those things are going to scale up. So, like, the amount of work that you have, the expectations by themselves. And so if you don't have anything to manage that, if you don't have some kind of a care plan in place, even you might even go to coaching, professional coaching, you are going to suffer, right? And like you're saying, by itself, it was the workload in doing articles by itself at such a big firm was crazy, despite everything else that you had to juggle. So maybe just I guess some things you would have done differently, not to regret your what happened or to beat yourself up, but just those that might be in those kinds of firms, or thinking or aspiring to be in a firm like ENS or the other big ones, like looking back, what would you advise about things that they could have in place just to take care of themselves?
Yeah, I think we don't get taught these things enough. You have to make time for yourself. You have to take care of yourself. You have to. I'm a lot much better now at it, but
Hmm.
you have to tell yourself, okay, I'm making time for gym, and it's in my diary. No, I'm not having any meetings at that time, and I'm not doing any work at that time. I am making sure I have lunch. This is my lunch break. I don't do meetings at this time. If I feel like I've been going hard at it, some weeks are very busy and I have a lot of deadlines, then I might just decide, okay, I'm going to take this morning off to recuperate, or I'm going to take this day off and I'm going to recuperate. And I have that luxury now. I think when you're doing articles, it's very difficult to do that. It's very difficult to tell your boss, "Oh, but I need a break now." You really can't. You have to focus on recuperating around your work. So in the evenings, I don't know, take a long hot bath, make sure you have a good meal.
Yeah.
And in the weekends, really invest in yourself. Go and relax. Go for a hike. Do whatever de stresses you. Um, and for everybody, that's different, right? It might be reading a book, might be going out with friends. I don't know, maybe you like to plant flowers in your garden. I don't know what it is. As a person, as an individual, you have to figure out what relaxes you
Yeah.
and what helps you come back to center. Um, what's going to de-stress you, and figure out what helps your health. For me, I know I like to eat healthy, I like to exercise, I like to spend time with my family, um, and I like to plan everything. excuse me, and not overwhelm myself and have too many things on my plate the way I did back then. I rather try and spread everything out and manage expectations. And
Yeah.
if you plan your day, you've got to plan, like you plan your diary and your workload and your deadlines. You also need to plan for your health and your mental breaks and go, okay, this is a busy time of the week for me, but on Friday I'm taking off and I'm relaxing.
Yeah.
And that's what I do. And it's difficult for a lot of people, I do understand, but
Yeah.
you have to find a way to take care of yourself and you have to make time for it. I think a lot of people who work full-time jobs and they're working 40 hours a week, it really is tough to make time for it. I know when I was working, there were some people going at 5 a.m. in the morning. They do the whole 5 a.m. club and they go to the gym. I know some people go during their lunch break. Some people go after work. Some people track what they're eating and don't reach for all the luxuries and the donuts when you're stressed, and plan. I think for me, the biggest thing is I plan everything, my whole day, my whole week, my whole month. And I feel when I've planned everything, I am not overwhelmed by anything because I know exactly what's happening when my deadlines are. Obviously, things creep up and things happen, things are unplanned, but there's enough space in my diary to deal with it because I'm not coming from a state of panic. I'm not coming from a state of, oh my gosh, I'm already overwhelmed. It's very important not to put yourself in a mental state where you can't deal with what's happening in your life.
Yeah.
And also, don't put yourself in a state where health wise, whether it's mental, emotional, physical, you are in a state where you cannot perform at your best. Investing in your health is just as important as investing in your career. You would not have a career without your health. If you're
Yeah.
lying in hospital, guess what? You can't do anything. And you're not going to be able to serve your clients, and you're doing a disservice to yourself and to everyone else.
Yeah.
So for me, health is the most important thing. And I wish I knew that back then and I had focused and I thought, oh, I'm young, my body will tolerate it, I can do this. But eventually it does catch up with you. It
It
does.
does. Yeah.
And that's the sad part. Eventually everything is going to catch up to you.
Yeah. And it costs more when it does catch up, right?
Yes, yes.
It ends up costing you, at least financially, so much more than if you had maintained yourself inexpensively, um, to mitigate that. So, yeah, I mean, it is difficult during articles, internships, but you have to fit it in some.
Yes.
You know,
Some ways.
a good a good career plan, I say, factors in not factors in two things that are non you won't usually find in a career plan, which is planning for life to happen and planning to to care for yourself, to have like a self-management plan in place. Because like you say,
Yes, yes.
it's so inextricably linked. For me, I know if I don't take care of myself, I cannot show up in the ways that I want to show up and I want to serve people.
Hmm.
So for me, certain things are non-negotiable, like you said. And I've also had to learn things in hindsight, which is why I counsel and mentor vehemently against pushing it to make it. And yes, we are in in that phase in our internship pupillage where we want to impress, and so we want to appear to handle it and take on more. But look, as I say, your principal attorney or your fellow partner or associates, they're not going to come and foot the bill for your medical stuff and your mental health, your therapy, and all of that. So find a way. I agree with that. Find a way, plan for it, and of course make it non-negotiable that if I don't take care of myself, I really can't take care of my clients effectively. So I think, and
Yes.
again, people must do what works for them. So there's no cookie cutter self care recipe. You just do what works for you. But you have to do
Yes.
it,
Yes.
or else you're going to have a lot of, I would say, unnecessary setbacks, and your body does take longer to recover. Um, if you have one setback of like a series of physical health and mental health setbacks, it does take a lot longer for you to recover. So yeah, those are some good, that's some wisdom there. So
Yes.
and yeah, go ahead.
And there's that saying, if you don't make time for your health, you have to make time for your illnesses. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I had to go through sinus surgery. I am now complete asthmatic,
Mm-hmm.
um, and now I have to take medication every day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm fortunate enough; I haven't had another asthma attack. I haven't had surgery again, and my health has been really good.
Uh-huh.
Um, but some people aren't that lucky. They realize too late. They've
Yeah.
got high blood pressure, they're obese, they have cholesterol, they're diabetic.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's like a downward spiral. Yeah, and if you don't learn early on already to start taking care of yourself, it definitely will catch up with you.
Yeah. And because no one, a lawyer that can't breathe is pretty useless. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody wants a lawyer that can't breathe, can't speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, that's. I mean, those, I will never fail to state what might sound like the obvious to people, but one day somebody will thank you and will say, I you told me this, and I made the effort, and I found time, I found space, and I'm better for it because we don't want to see any more casualties. Um, and so just obviously going to getting married, reading articles, as if everything else isn't hectic enough. I mean, uh, getting married, and life happening, and
Yeah.
that you got pregnant unexpectedly, which is something that I tend to, when I'm mentoring and coaching females, even the males, I if they're not in that at that life stage, I tell them to factor that in. So I'll say, look, you
Yeah.
want to plan for a legal career. This, the demands, generally speaking. You have to think, hypothesize about having a family, having a partner, how many children you plan to have, because this career it's going to affect it. You are at some point going to become imbalanced because nobody gets it right all of the time or even half of the time. So there are times that maybe you're going to be too much invested in work and you're going to neglect your marriage, you're going to neglect your children. So you have to start thinking along those lines. And obviously it got fast forwarded to you because some of us get married after we qualified, but some of us, we get married while we are qualifying. So it's like definitely not for the faint of heart. But of course, as with that particular life event and even having a baby, there are no regrets about that. But I'm just to add to everything that you experienced, you know, there was that which I'm like,
Yes.
as you were telling me your initial answer, I'm like, we still in articles. Are we still in articles? And it's like everything is just, and you telling me, no, it's still in articles. I'm like, oh my word. So I mean, I'm sure, of course, there are people that do that, and maybe there's no particular recipe or how you navigate that, but um, obviously it's a huge leap. Firstly, you got your career that you are trying to forge ahead in, and then of course we know marriage is like another PhD by itself. So it's like you got this. article thing going on. You're trying to finish that, and then now you've got a spouse, which we all know the honeymoon period doesn't last forever, and so you've got that to navigate, and maybe just speak to those that are in that position, or maybe even recently gotten married and started articles, and like, how do you? I've not been there, so whatever you say will be the gospel. So maybe just talk to that. Like, how do you manage two huge things going on simultaneously?
I think I think you have to sit down with your partner and explain to your partner, this is my career, these are the expectations on me. I have to work long hours. Um, if they are aware that you are coming home late all the time and sometimes you have to work weekends, and they are still willing to stay with you. I mean, I met my partner when I was in university. So we were together for a very long time. Um, he was quite familiar with my career and how long I was working and that I was never home, and he was also focusing on his career. I think if you can sit down and have an open and honest conversation with each other and lay down your boundaries or what's non-negotiables and explain to each other, this is how it's going to happen, or this is what is going to happen, and this is how we are going to deal with it. Um, and there's that understanding from the get-go already. And if your partner already understands from the get-go, then it's not too difficult. um, I say nothing is impossible. You either are willing to make it work or you are not. You are either prepared to put in the effort or you are not.
Yeah.
So it's more of a mindset thing, and it's understanding each other's situation and understanding what is expected from each other, um, and helping out where you can and supporting where you can, and not compromising yourself in any way. It's very important to have a good partner. I think, a partner can sometimes make or break you. Um, this is the person you're going to go through all life's challenges with. You need to have someone that you feel comfortable with, comfortable communicating, talking about things. I always look at some couples that ask for an anti-nuptial contract, and if they can't even bring it up with their partner, I go, in my mind, I'm thinking, if you can't even talk about this right now,
Exactly.
just how is your marriage going to work exactly? But I don't say that. Um,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking that
You're
you
flagging
must
it in
be
your
able,
mind.
yes, you must be able to talk about everything and
Yeah.
anything and feel comfortable and vulnerable. And you need to have a supportive partner. If you don't, I think it's also going to be a problem. And you need to discuss expectations. If your partner's expectations is that you be a stay-at-home wife and you have kids and just cook and clean, it's probably not the best partner for you if you want to have a legal career.
Yeah.
Your values and your expectations, it needs to align and it needs to work. Um, you it can't only be about chemistry and love.
Mhm.
It takes
No.
it takes more to make a marriage work than
it
that.
takes it takes a
Some people
lot
don't shoot
more.
me for that.
It takes a lot more.
Really? Yeah, there is a lot of logistics involved also when you have kids. Um,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, so you have
Yeah.
to be on the same page, and someone
Mm-hmm.
needs to be, you know, you need to be checking in on each other as well, because you don't want to drift
Absolutely.
apart
Yeah.
either.
Yeah.
So you need to have those moments where
Mm-hmm.
you check in, you're on the same page, you understand each other. And you just like you need to make time for your health, you need to make
Yeah.
time for your partner, for your marriage, for your relationships,
Mm-hmm.
wherever you are in your life, at what stage you are in your love life. You have to make time for that as well, because we can't operate in a vacuum and, oh, we're just doing law, and we're only working. All of us have other goals and aspirations besides our career. You know,
Yeah.
I speak to a lot of founders and a lot of women, and they also want to have families, and they also want to get married, and men too. It's not only a
Yeah.
woman
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Men too, and so you have to think about that, and what are your non-negotiables, and what are you prepared to compromise with, what kind of partner do you need or would complement you. um, it's all factors you need to consider, and I find what works for one marriage might not work for another marriage, because the two people are different all the time. It's the same with your health. What works for one person might not work for another person. So you have to figure that out.
Yeah. I think where the pitfall is that, we sort of, we don't if we don't communicate, then there's all these assumptions about, for example, what being married to a lawyer is like.
Hmm.
And then you tend to sort of contract with each other based on those assumptions. And if there's no open communication about these are the realities, then obviously there's going to be, build up of resentment, and I didn't, it's not the way I thought it would be, and all of those things. So I agree wholeheartedly with all of that advice. It does take work, and um, ultimately, if your career goes down, you only have your people, right? You only have your
Hmm.
family, you only have your partner. So if that's not maintained, and you've not made an effort to, at least made an effort to maintain it, then of course, when the career does let you down, or you experience some kind of snag, um, then of course, you don't have that relationship to fall back on. So I certainly do agree with that advice. And of course, not to keep you, I know you're very busy, but we'll just go through the tail end. So how you got to where you are today. So obviously you had that, what I call, um, the ideal situation where you got offered a position in litigation. Um,
Hmm.
and at a firm like ENS, you will say, what will be your default answer? Yes, and you will announce it on LinkedIn. I'm thrilled to announce that I've started as a litigation associate at ENS South Africa, right? But of course, again, like your initial offer of articles, you declined it, right?
Yes.
And of course, your reason was what you just mentioned now about having that balance. So maybe you could just, people that might be shocked to say, how can she turn down a litigation position at ENS? Is she crazy? Like, just let us into your thought process and what inspired such a decision to decline.
I just like with the articles offer from Weber Wenzel, I always follow my intuition and my gut, and my instinct was telling me no. My health is deteriorating. I am now in the first trimester of my pregnancy. No one knew. I kept it a secret as well.
Yeah.
And I think maybe my team suspected, to be honest. Um,
No,
but
the ladies tend to know. They can just take a look at you and make it.
and it's also a little bit taboo. I got married during articles. It's also like a little bit taboo. What is she
Yeah.
doing? Um,
Exactly. Yeah.
I fell pregnant, and I still had 3 more months left on my articles. It was a crazy time for me, and I just said I have to put this baby first. I can't think about me. I can't think about my spouse. Right now, I have to think about my baby. And I thought there's absolutely no way that I'm going to have a healthy pregnancy in this environment where am where I already had to have sinus surgery and I had an asthma attack. And I'm not blaming ENS per se. It's just the work environment and with me not taking care of myself in the way that I should, and it being such a struggle, I thought this is probably not going to end well for me. Um, in fact, I actually had hives during that first trimester, and I had to stay at home for a few weeks also. Um, and um, And I just thought to myself, there's absolutely no way I'm going to be able to have a healthy pregnancy, take the rest I need, take care of myself in the way that I wanted to if I was working the way that I was. And that was the big factor for me. And I decided, you know what, I'm not going to do this. And I'm not going to put myself through this as much as it is great. And it's a great offer. And I think if I wasn't pregnant, I might have actually taken it. But because I had to think of someone else, I had to think of my
Yeah.
pregnancy and my baby and my health, I decided, you know what, I'm going to take the break. My body has been screaming for a break. I'm going to take a break. And of course, everybody thought I was crazy again. Um, and it worked out pretty well because I got to rest and I got to recover and my health was so much better. And when I left ENS, I had no health issues anymore. I had a smooth pregnancy. Um, and those of you who have been pregnant, you'll realize how exhausted you are. Like pregnancy is so exhausting. And I was glad that I had the opportunity to take a break. And also my partner, he also had to take care of me and the baby, right? That's also a financial strain. Um, and I was lucky enough, he was willing to do that and capable of doing that. I know some people are not in that position. I've been very fortunate in that regard. And even after being pregnant, I still had this itch to go back. I still had this itch to go back and have a legal career. And I kind of wanted the best of both worlds. You know, I wanted work life balance. I wanted to be a present mom, present spouse. I wanted to work flexible hours and I wanted to work on my terms and go back into legal practice on my terms. And when you have your own law firm, you're the boss, obviously, and you choose your deadlines, you choose your clients. You can choose to take on more work or refer it to someone else, or you can hire someone to help you with the workload. So there's ways and means of managing it. Um, and like I said, I have more freedom to choose my hours, to choose when I work, when I have meetings. And what I've tried to do to the best of my ability is to fit my work around my life rather than do it the other way around, you know, rather than try to fit my life around my work. Um, and that's was the goal of this law firm and what I have been trying to achieve, and giving myself the space to have a career and the space for the other parts of me that are in my life.
Yeah. So I think myself, I could never do one or the other, right? It's it does make you sacrificial. Where you're like, okay, I've got a bigger cause to think about now than my career, and I think that's a good learning point in general for those that are entering the profession. You can't have tunnel vision when it comes to, you know, I'm gonna graduate, get articles, internship. land a position in a law firm and everything will just be, it's all me, right? But I think there does come a point where you're like, okay, my career is actually a small part of my life. So, and I like what you said, and it's something that I've been going on about recently is that your life must, your career has to fit into your life, not the other way around. So I think it's a very, very wise
Mhm.
point that you made there. And of course, thinking about more than yourself, right? So, I mean, it doesn't
Yes.
have to be a pregnancy. It could be maybe a partner who's maybe gotten a bad diagnosis, or a parent that is maybe now like has dementia and there's no one to care for them. I mean,
Mhm.
you've gotta look at your career and say, okay, this can't, as much as I'm earning money from it, but like I need to factor in people in my life who might be affected by my career, and I need to make myself available. And what I think I admire and I want you to just unpack a little bit now is that tension between I want to take a break, I want to put my baby first, I want to put my marriage first, but I'm restless. I'm the same. Like I could never, and I love doing everything about being at home and taking care of things, but I could never just do that. So was it that restlessness that, and of course, you mentioned COVID, out of necessity as well. You kind of had to get into figuring out your own plan. But I may just talk to that restlessness because there might be those people that may be sitting at home and it's like, I've got the children and I've got the happy marriage baby and maybe I'm financially secure. Everything seems to be working out, but I still want to get out there and do my thing. Just speak to that.
I think everyone is different.
Mm,
I think, and it depends on you as a person. If you are restless, and I think a lot of women do, they want to have both because it's just how we operate and how we feel, and there is a way to do it. I just think for each person, you need to figure out how you're going to go back into it. What are you going to do? Are you going to go into a different niche, or are you going to go into a different industry? Are you going to, I've met someone where they're a legal editor, or and they edit legal textbooks, or they write legal textbooks, or they go into academics, um, or they go into journalism and they write legal articles or write opinions, or so there's so much you can do. There's now social media, and you could be
yeah,
a legal content creator, and there's that niche that is developing there as well. There's
yeah,
also been this new niche where you can create legal digital products. I know lots of law firms design their own diary and their own way to keep track of matters, or whatever it is. You could design that. You could design legal apps or legal software. So there's so much. The opportunities are endless. I think there is always a way back, and I think people get so judgmental when they say, "Oh, you want to come back? Why? Why would you do that? Why not?" No, why not? If you can, and there's an itch, and you have opportunities, and you found a way to do it for yourself and make it work, why not? Um, I think I think people can sometimes be too judgmental and too hard on themselves. I think it's normal to take a career break. I think people look at it like it's a really bad thing, even mental breaks sometimes. People take off and they travel for a year and they come back. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, it's okay to take some breaks. It's okay to come back into the profession again. Um, it's okay to, there's a season for everything. That's what I say. There's a season
Yeah.
and a time and a place for everything. You
Yeah.
just need to go through the seasons and find,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm ready now to go back, or, oh, I'm not going to go back. And that's also okay. I don't
Mm-hmm.
judge anyone at all. I think to each their own. Um,
Yeah.
and everyone's life and their circumstances is different. Who knows? I might have another life twist. The man above likes to send that my way.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
we'll see what
that's that's
happens.
that's the nice thing about our stories and everyone that I featured so far is that all of us, it's still happening. It's like we haven't. It might appear to people that we've reached the pinnacle or the epitome or the person that they aspire to be, but we are not finished yet, right? We are still very much a work in progress. And if I interview you in a year's time, who knows what might have happened? And that's a nice thing about. I think that's a nice thing about even having role models and those that might find role models through these episodes, is that your role model is being still being perfected and is still journeying. And so the nice thing is that you don't get to benefit from what they've learned in the past, but you get to benefit from what they might be experiencing in the present. So yeah, that's, I mean, having a career break as a woman, I think, is highly stigmatized, and
Yes.
often you sort of expected to stay. Now, oh, you took a break to have a child. Um, so you kind of, even other female, they kind of relegate you to that. Okay, you're now a mother or you're now a homemaker. But the reality is, a lot of us, myself included, we have a lot. I have so much to offer. I mean, it's like every couple of months, I'm discovering something new that I can do, and so I want to put that out into the world, you know. And we don't have to relegate to like one role and say that's your prison sentence for life. It's possible to do everything. And then
Yes.
of course people will ask you, how are you balancing? How are you doing it? And of course then you can start sharing your story. But that whole restlessness is there. And I think those of us, those that are listening that have that restlessness, entertain it, don't push it away, because it's probably a sign that you still have a lot more to give. And perhaps if you've taken a break, taken a step back for whatever reason, you probably have a lot of different or a fresher perspective, and you can come into the legal field and perhaps innovate. And that's what we're going to talk about now with the whole advent of when you got to Joburg and your husband job made you guys relocate, couldn't find work, found work that just before COVID and you didn't accept it before that. And so you're sitting with your conveyancing, your additional admissions, which is great by the way, because I think you can maybe speak to the importance of upskilling. But you got to that point and now you're like, okay, I was about to accept the job, COVID hit, I've upskilled myself, I've got to make it work, right? So maybe just speak to the drive that you have, like as opposed to just saying, "Oh, maybe I should just stay at home. Maybe I'm meant to stay at home and just be a mom." And like, what besides that restlessness that I spoke about, like what made you like
Yeah,
say, "Oh, like
I
I've got to make it work, and I've got to whatever." Even though I never run a law firm before, but I've got to do something.
I have a can do attitude. I'm going to figure out a way. I'm going
Hmm.
to try to make this work. And I think when I rejected that Weber Wenzel offer for articles, I realized I actually need to start stepping out of my comfort zone. Even if I'm not
Yeah.
prepared or I'm not ready or I don't feel like I'm ready, it's okay. Um, it's okay to just start your own law firm even if you're not 100% ready. You don't get ready first and then do it. You do it and then you start to feel like you can do it, right? You gain the skills and the experience on the way. You'll never ever be 100% ready. That's it's a fallacy that people say, "Oh, I was ready and I did this." Um, I don't 100% believe that. You constantly evolving and constantly changing. To a certain extent, you just have to take the plunge. That's it. And I just thought to myself, well, I did conveyancing, I did notary, I passed, I can do this. I'm going to set up my own law firm. I didn't struggle with the practice management course. That's another course that a lot of people fail repeatedly and struggle with. And I said, well, let me use these skills that I have and let me make a way for myself. Let me figure out a niche for myself in the legal profession. And let me go back on my terms and the way I want to. No one's giving me what I want. I'm going to
Yeah.
create what I want. You're not giving me
Yeah.
a seat at
I
the
love that.
table. Guess
Yeah.
what? I'm creating my own table now.
Creating.
Um,
Yeah. Love
and
that.
that's exactly what I did.
Mm.
And it's when you run your own law firm. I'm not saying it's easy. There are things you're going to have to learn. There is time and effort you have to put in, but it is also very rewarding because it gives you the flexibility. It gives you the decision making power. It's you that gets to steer the ship the way that you feel like, and you only have yourself to account to. And that's the beauty of it.
No, I love that. I very much have that mindset. It's like, not that I don't take no for an answer, but like no is like a last resort. If I can
Yes.
create it, if I can innovate it, if I can make up something as I go along, like I'm gonna do it. So I
Wing it.
fully
Just wing it
endorse.
if you
I
have
fully
to.
I'd venture to say at least a quarter of the time I'm winging it, which is
Yes.
like, again, it kind of, it does push you out of your comfort zone, because I often get asked, can you teach us on this, teach us on that? And I might need to go and do my own refresher, but I'll say, yeah, I can do that. So it kind of takes me
Yeah.
out of my comfort zone of, everything, to like, okay, maybe I need to go and update my knowledge. Or maybe I need to go and learn about a new area of law for me to teach somebody else. So it kind of, by putting yourself on the spot and like taking the plunge, as you say, it does force you out of that zone where you are confident, maybe too confident, and you're like, okay, now I actually have to go and do something extra to be able to meet this service requirement or this client or this needs. Um, but you do
Mhm.
it, and then of course you come away from that experience, and not only have you upskilled, but you've also opened up maybe a possible avenue of work. Maybe a new client might have materialized by you throwing yourself out there. So I fully endorse that attitude, and I think if more of the younger generation would have this attitude instead of depending on the system to give them stuff,
Mhm.
I'll say, look, guys, you don't you decided to upskill, right? Because again, that upskill, that particular kind of upskilling afforded you flexibility. We could have worked from home. You could have just been, like saying, on your own terms. And I'll say, look, guys, you need to take an inventory. What skills do you have in your hand besides your degree, right? So if the legal field is not offering you work, if you're getting rejection emails galore, then what is it that you have in your hand that you can monetize, right? Maybe
Yes.
one day you can marry it back to the legal side, legal field,
Mhm.
right? You don't have to give that up. But there's something that you have that you can say, I'm gonna start this business, or I'm gonna create a position for myself. Instead of giving out my CV, I'm gonna give firms a proposal of what I can do instead of the traditional route. And it's that kind of out of
Mhm.
the box thinking that hopefully can catch in the younger generation, where it's like we're
Yes.
not waiting for opportunities, or putting yourself at the mercy of a system. And I mean, the research shows that there aren't enough positions for candidate attorneys.
Mhm.
So you have to have something. Your backup plan might just have to become your main plan. because all of you are competing for the same positions. And if that's going to be the case, you need to figure out, hey, how can I make this work for myself? How can I innovate? How can I buck the system, so to speak? So
Mm-hmm.
I just hope that those that are listening, or some that listen to this episode, can catch our, like I say, can do attitude. We'll take no
Yes.
for an answer as a last resort, but we'll do everything in our power to make it work, and to make it work for us, so that we are not at the mercy of a system, at the mercy of a boss. Um, as you said, we're accountable to ourselves. Everything rises and falls on us. And so, yeah, I fully endorse that. And
Yes.
I,
I
I,
think I
I,
think it's
go
so
ahead.
important as someone entering the legal profession not to only focus on your LLB and your technical skills
Mm-hmm.
and your legal knowledge. You know, when you enter a law firm, everybody has an LLB. You're no different to anyone else. Um, you need to find something that can set you apart, something that is unique to you or differentiate you or something. And that other thing that you are learning, or that skill or that experience, can always be your fallback as well. Um, some people bake and they have a whole Instagram page of their creations. Some people become a certified yoga teacher and they do that part time and work for studios. Some people do something like lead generation for law firms. So they create funnels or they create websites or, you know, code their apps. Law firms all have their own apps these days. Um, think think about what you love, think about your skills, think about what else can you do other than your LLB that you enjoy and can be your fallback and also differentiate you from everyone else,
Yeah,
because law firms are not looking for people with just an LLB. They're
yeah,
looking for people that have more than that, right? Maybe you do a podcast. um, Maybe you do art, and the reason why they're looking for people that are different is to attract a different client base. If you do art on the side, maybe you know a lot of artists, you can bring a lot of art dealers as clients.
yeah,
And if you're baking on the side, maybe you're going to attract a lot of bakers as clients. You know, it's if you do golf, and I know that's why a lot of people do golf, they meet a lot of clients while they do golf. But you don't have to do golf, you could do something else, right? Do what interests you, sets you apart. Maybe you review movies, I don't know, whatever it is, but think about something else, another skill other than your legal skills and your legal knowledge and your LLB, and use that to your advantage as well. Um, and I can't stress enough that having a personal brand these days, I mean, when I started 10 years ago, I don't think it was even Instagram, but um, it's a skill. Marketing is a skill. Having a
yeah,
brand is a skill.
yeah,
And it's important to network. It's important to get to know people and make connections. You never know when you might need to pull on them in the future. So think about those things. If I had to go back, I would invest in my personal brand and my image, and I would definitely learn other skills besides just legal skills. It's very important to be a holistic, balanced person, and it's okay to have more than one passion, and it's okay to change your passions, um, and it's okay to pivot, and it's okay to have career breaks. And I think society needs to start accepting that we are all human, and we evolve and we change, and it's part of life, and life happens. What do they say? Change is life and life is change. So we need to embrace all those facets of our life, and understand that they are all a part of us.
Absolutely. Yeah. That I think in my approach, I have a very holistic approach. Um, in that we're trying to we have to figure out who we are as people, you know, and then of course that factors into the kind of legal professionals. And you can't live this dichotomous thing where you deny part of yourself, because that's not a very lawyerly thing to do. Or that's not a very lawyerly habit to have or hobby to have. It's like whatever quirks, whatever stuff you come with, that's your package. As you said, that's your brand. I preach a lot about lawyers and personal branding, simply because, especially in the early stages of our career, we tend to brand ourselves according to the firms that we choose or the firms that take us on. And so once we leave and our CVs reflect that, okay, we worked at X firm, we try to piggyback off that firm's reputation as opposed to having your knowing what you have to offer the profession. So I think that's a nice place to land the plane. Um, and of course, as always, all my guests, they always welcome back, because, as I mentioned, we all works in progress. So maybe we can do an update episode.
Yes,
Because I think maybe even from a business perspective, business owner perspective, those that might want to start firms, maybe we can do an episode around that. But I mean, I've been I think you have reached out to me, and I, not for the podcast, um, for collaboration purposes, and I think uh, it's also been a good networking opportunity for me. And of course, I thought I would introduce you to my crowd, which is now 13,000 on LinkedIn as
wow.
of as of last night. As of last night, like, it was like New Year, like Happy New Year. We just reached 13,000
That is
followers.
quite an achievement.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just, again, it's something, another, maybe another episode we can do on personal branding. That's a testament to just me showing up every day and adding value and
Yeah.
doing my thing, right? So, but of course, I'm very much looking forward to our other collaboration efforts, and of course, getting to know you as a colleague, and expanding my knowledge, because I have a lot to learn, and I think these episodes, it's kind of, I sit and I take in some of the stuff, because um, if I don't learn, or if I feel if I lose that student mentality, then pretty much finished. You plateau, then you're dead, right? So um, I'm certainly looking forward to learning about conveyancing and, ANC and all of these things that were not within my scope of practice when I was in practice. But of course, meeting people like yourself is just, it just expands my, not my knowledge, but like you said, getting out of my comfort zone. Looking
Yes.
forward to more opportunities to collaborate in future. So thank you so much for
Thank you so much for having
taking
me on
time
your podcast.
out of your
It is
schedule.
lovely to be here. And I'm grateful for this opportunity to tell my story. And I hope everyone that is listening it gained or learned something from it. And of course, they can always pop me a message if they have further questions.
Yeah, so I think you're active on Instagram.
Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. You may follow my business at Safeda Law, and then you can reach out to me under my name and surname on LinkedIn.
Cool. Yeah. Guys, I'd encourage you to do that. And of course, Khairiyah is also very big on networking and, as a business owner, personal branding, all of those things. So if you want to pick a brain on those things as well, please continue the conversation. Um, my guests are not people on pedestal; they are real people. That's what I hope to convey. and they are people that you can talk to and learn from even outside of these episodes. So whenever this episode does come out, I hope that it adds value to your journey. It speaks to some part of where you may find yourself. And as I said, hopefully you revisit the episode. And with any luck, we'll have Khairiyah back on the podcast to give us a lot more wisdom on different areas because she is a bit of a minefield and we can't even cover that in an hour and 45 minutes. So that's saying a lot. So thank you so much, Khairiyah, and um,
It's a
for
pleasure, Lisa.
sharing your story. And I think we underestimate the power of our stories. But I found from personal experience that it does actually not just inspire people, but sometimes just lift them out of a bog, or maybe even encourage them to quit if they needed some encouragement to quit. Maybe they're like, okay, I'm not managing, So whatever the outcome, our stories are powerful, and yours is certainly multifaceted, and I hope to capture every facet of it in future episodes. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa.